All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started. Before we get into our regular agenda, we have back-to-back public hearings. And the way we'll do this is I'll open one public hearing, get any comments, and then close the public hearing, and then open the next one, and we'll follow that same process. So the first public hearing is a public hearing respecting ordinance number 426 of the City of Buckhannon, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance 244 and ordinance number 282 of the City of Buckhannon by rezoning a portion of that property located at 29 Armory Road from C2 Highway Commercial District to I Industrial District. I would entertain the remarks of anyone that seeks to be heard relative to ordinance 426 of the City of Buckhannon. Does anyone wish to be heard? I'll call once, twice, three times. We are adjourned out of the public hearing respecting ordinance 426 of the City of Buckhannon. The second public hearing is a public hearing regarding ordinance number 427 of the City of Buckhannon, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance number 244 of the City of Buckhannon by rezoning those properties located at 52, 54, and 56 South Kanawha Street from R2 General Residential District A to C1 Central Commercial Business District. The impact of this ordinance, if effected, would be to extend the downtown commercial business district by 3 additional lots going up going down South Kanawha Street. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on ordinance 427 of the City of Buckhannon? Laura Rushline.
I'm 56 South Kanawha Street,
Yeah.
my real estate office, and I kind of got drug into this through a neighbor making a complaint about a neighbor, and I just wanted to put it on the record that I wasn't in any violation of any ordinance.
No, you haven't.
And that I just agreed to rezone to help both my neighbors.
Yeah.
And
Peacemaker, huh?
yeah, so I'm in agreement with it, and it's fine.
Good. And I don't think our friends at 52 or 54 are here, are they? Nobody else is here to... Is anyone else here to make comment or offer remarks concerning the rezoning of the 3 lots that will add to the central downtown commercial business district heading south on South Kanawha Street toward Tennerton? I'll call for it once, twice, 3 times. We are adjourned out of our public hearing, and that will conclude all matters concerning what we need to do by state code concerning ordinances 426 and 427. We'll now convene the regular meeting, and I'll call to order our August 16 meeting, and we'll start with a moment of silence. I would lead in with this. I lost my dad 12 days ago, and hundreds of folks have sent me emails, Facebook stuff, notes, cards, dropped cookies off. You didn't give me any cookies, Rigger. And I appreciate it very much. I'm reminded, many of you here, over the years that I have served the city, going on 36 years now, I know you've lost people very close to you as well. And when you lose a mom or a dad, it heightens that awareness of reaching out to others during their times of loss. So we've all suffered loss. We all will in the future. We all know folks that need our best thoughts, wishes, prayers. Let's keep those folks in our best thoughts as we have our moment of silence. Thank you very much. And to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening, I'm going to call upon Lauren Brooks Stewart. We'll see if they teach her that out of Buckhannon Upshur High School. Lauren, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. You know, I get to do a lot of these fancy schmancy dedications, and there's some things during the course of the year that I really get a special kick out of. Friendly Way Day and Web Grub Day and Service to Youth Champions Day around Strawberry Festival. But I think my very favorite, because it memorializes one of my all-time very favorite people in my life. Back in September of 2000, we lost Binky Poundstone. And several years after her passing, her family decided they wanted to honor every year a member of our city family who had a child who was going to attend college. And for the last, I guess it's 11, 12 years now, the family has awarded $500 to someone in our extended city family. And this year's honoree is going to be the daughter of our police officer, Mark Stewart, Lauren Brooke Stewart. So Lauren, would you and your dad please come up and join me up front here? You've waited on me at Dairy Queen before, haven't you? She makes a heck of a blizzard. She's setting me up for the Mayor's Fitness Challenge Cozad for next year. You know, she's been doing these horrible things to me with the ice cream. Okay. Whereas Elizabeth J. Binky Poundstone served the city of Buckhannon for 37 years in several capacities, including as a member of the City Council, the longtime city recorder and treasurer, and mayor. And whereas Mrs. Poundstone died while serving as our city's mayor on September 7, 2000, leaving a rich and selfless legacy of devoted public service to our city and further to the youth of our Buckhannon-Upshur community. And whereas Mrs. Poundstone's family in 2008 proposed to the City Council that a family-funded scholarship be established with $500 to be awarded in August of each year in memory of Mrs. Poundstone to a deserving student seeking to attend college whose parent or other guardian or family member is or had been an employee of the city of Buckhannon, or which employee in their own right is seeking to further their own education through college attendance. And whereas the City Council considered and approved the award of the Poundstone Family Scholarship proposal during its regularly convened meeting of July 3, 2008, agreeing to the city's participation in the annual scholarship application, review, and selection process. And whereas as a consequence of that process that included the review and selection committee's consideration of several very well qualified applicants, the committee has determined that the 11th recipient of the annual Elizabeth J. Binky Poundstone Memorial Scholarship shall be Lauren Brooke Stewart of Buckhannon, being the daughter of 22-year veteran police officer Mark Stewart and her mother, Laura Ann Stewart. And whereas the Poundstone family and the entire city of Buckhannon family desire to formally recognize Lauren Brooke Stewart and wish her the very best of luck as she continues her studies this fall as a sophomore, majoring in chemistry and minoring in criminal justice at West Virginia Wesleyan College in Buckhannon. Now therefore, I, as mayor of the city of Buckhannon, pursuant to the power and authority duly vested in me, do hereby proclaim the 11th recipient of the annual Elizabeth J. Binky Poundstone Memorial Scholarship to be Lauren Brooke Stewart. Ms. Stewart further shall be recognized in perpetuity as the recipient of this prestigious award through the inscription of her name upon a placard to be displayed in the main foyer of Buckhannon City Hall, along with all past and future Poundstone Memorial Scholarship recipients. Given under my hand and the official seal of the city of Buckhannon this 16th day of August, 2018. Young lady, Mrs. Poundstone would be very proud of you. And,
You got one more?
oh, one more.
Thank you.
The best part is this check. Should I make sure it's really for $500? Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, there you go. Congratulations. We're very proud of you. Mark, we're proud of you too. Thank you for all your good work. Congratulations. And the Stewart family is welcome to stick around for the rest of the meeting. I would hightail it too. Next up is Mr. David Powell.
They did not make it.
They didn't make it. We were going to hear about our exit conference relative to the recently completed audit, which
Hopefully the next meeting.
hopefully the next meeting, which we are sure will be a glowing report. Right, Amby? As Amby disappears from Mexico. That's a joke. That's just a joke. Yeah, everything's fine. Everything's good. All right. Department and board reports. First up is Callie Cronin-Sams, our information coordinator and grant writer researcher. Callie, how's it going?
Great, thank you. So if you turn to, I do have the report in here. I'm sorry, I was not quite prepared for you, but I've got our normal report starting out with website and social media activity. I decided to add in a little bit of some graphics as well for you to take a look at. The graph that you see there at the top is what I see when I log in to our website and see what Google Analytics provides us as far as our how many users we're getting, that sort of thing. You'll notice there's some spikes and some dips. The dips generally, what I've noticed is on the weekend, we don't get as many people visiting the site, so if there's a dip, that's just the weekend. And then those spikes, the dates I went and checked and they tend to correspond with a press release. So we are getting more people who, when they see the press release on Facebook, they must then click on it and go to our webpage. So that seems to be working out well. As far as Facebook goes, we reached 28,000, a little bit over 28,000 users this past month since July 19th. Some of the ones that did the best were the Ron Kid thank you photo and the volunteer platform information as well. Speaking of which, the volunteer, the web aspect of that is live now, and had a good turnout for that yesterday. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But still, while we're on the website and social media, I'm still looking to get the YouTube channel up and going, so that hasn't fallen off the radar, but just haven't had the time to get there yet. With the website itself, we've had over 6,000 page views since last time, from 2,556 users. So of course, that means that they look at multiple parts of our page, so that's good, I think. We had several press releases that went out, so the photo that you have there in the report is the one that went along with the press release on the painting of the dog tunnel that the CDC kids did. So that was a fun event. Glad to have that happen. We also put out some news on the Wonder and Grow program. That was through the Try This. I attended a Try This conference and partnered with these people. They're actually out of Elkins. They're also going to be doing their pilot program at Beverly Elementary, but they'll be doing an after-school gardening, outdoors, nature type club with that funding at Stockard. So did a press release on that. Did a press release on move-in day this weekend for Wesleyan students, and also the changes in traffic flow on Saturday. And all the good construction, the improvements that have been going on North Florida sidewalks and street, as well as Trader's Alley, did a release on that. So looking over, you see the photo on the back. That's just a shot from the web launch yesterday, and as you can tell, it was well attended. It seemed like we got positive feedback from that. Everyone thought it might be something they could use from their organizations. I think we had 23 organizations in town represented, so we were really happy to see how many people were able to come out for that. Been working a little bit to prepare some slides for our town hall, the Revenue Town Hall coming up. And met with some folks around Beth Henry Vance with the YP and REAP program. Went to the Buckhannon River Watershed Association meeting last night. And then Sarah will be attending the Bobcat Fair on Saturday. So we're getting out there and talking to everybody around town and seeing what they need with the city. Moving along the grants, I already talked about the Wonder and Grow with Stockard. Looking forward to getting that started in September. I watched a webinar for Smart Streets, and so I'll keep watching that as a possible funding source for sidewalk improvements and that sort of thing. The volunteer center is doing great. It's live now, and we've already started to see some activity. We get emails back when anyone's on and has, wanted more information about a particular volunteering opportunity. So we're already starting to see those emails come in, and so that's good news. This coming week, I'll be meeting with Shane Whitehair, Region 7, as well as Erasmo to talk about some improvements possibly at the storm and sanitary sewer system. And I'm also keeping an eye on some mini grants available through the Families Leading Change Summit coming up in October. So that's what I've been up to. I've got the events list there at the very end. And of course this weekend, Saturday, the Trader's Alley block party's coming up. Following Saturday, the Buckhannon River Fest down at the Riverwalk Park. And there will also be a Labor Day car show on September 3rd. September 4th, we've got the Revenue Town Hall meeting. And on the 8th, the paper shred event at the Recycling Center. And keep on going down into September and into October, but I won't read those item by item unless you had a question about any of them. But of course, a big one being our Truck Fest and Children's Fest and Fall Fest coming up in mid and late September.
Sneaking right up.
Yep.
That's all you've done the last 2 weeks, huh? Does anybody have any questions or comments about Callie's report? She's always busy. Thanks, Callie. Appreciate you. Next up, get back to my agenda here. Next up is Public Works Director Jerry Arnold. Mr. Jarnold, as we were starting to call him at the sanitary board meeting.
Under my report, still continue to work on obtaining the final right-of-ways for the water system improvement projects. I think we've got all of those, at least verbal agreements on those now. I've installed all the GPS tracking equipment except for the sewer department vehicles, and I gave those to Raz to see if we'll be installing those. They're all up and operational. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. The water department report, I apologize. I inadvertently missed changing my some of the items on that. I was kind of in a hurry today was putting my report together, but same projects, just an update. They continue to inspect on the Brushy Fork and Liggett Addition projects. The Water System Improvement Project 1, we've gotten information that we can expect that Federal Highway Administration permit in the next couple of weeks, so that's good news. The Water System Project 2, the alignment adjustment that I reported on last week and is on this report again, just obtained the final right-of-ways on that. Continue to work on the line extension Pennerton for Jenny Nelson, and Kelly notified us of a issue with one of the high service pumps, and a switch on it, so they're down one of their high service pumps, and you may recall that he had one of the raw water pumps out right now for rebuild, so it's kind of one of those keep your fingers crossed kind of times, because that's the only 2 pumps we have for bringing water into the system. Sewer department, Raz had a DEP inspection. It went well. The inspectors went through the entire plant, documents at several pump stations. Per end of inspection summary conversation, they commented they were well organized and executed their permit well. Their only NOV will be for copper exceedance, which occurred 1.5 years ago. He believes that the handling and management of the plant sludge will minimize the potential for that type of exceedance. We also need to update several documents identified throughout the inspection. We will be completing the last phase on Wood Street, which includes paving of the road cuts, the rehabilitation of the 12-foot deep manhole behind Lowther's Hose Shop on Morton Avenue has been completed. Added a stormwater inlet on Victoria Street to control stormwater spread on the street at Mr. Sharkaliski's. Addressed a ditch line that had been filled by sediment over the years in front of Don Nestor's. And planned an extension for a vacant lot off of Brushy Fork near the auto auction. Waste Department, we have accepted application to be screening for new waste laborer. Street Department crew continues to work on Traders Alley North Florida Street project. Most of the paving contract that we had let has been completed. And we currently have a large sycamore tree across the river channel. It's almost completely across the river channel. There's still room to get it boat around it, but it's getting pretty close. Just upstream from the boat launch at Wood Street. So we're going to try to, you notice I put move or remove. If we can turn that top around in the stream, of course that's going to help, but ultimately we'd like to get that thing out of there. But again, it's a huge tree. Engineering, FEMA Generator Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, applications 1 and 2. The Region 7 multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan and the 2 maintenance agreements have been received and approved. Received by the West Virginia Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, awaiting approval of the grants. Water Department Early Warning Monitoring System Phase 1, the equipment's been purchased. And to satisfy the conditions of the $50,000, the Water Department will begin construction of the building that will house the equipment once the 2 water system improvement projects have been completed. ACP Water System Improvement Project water line installation activities for Contract 1 continue. The contractor is approximately 50% completed this time, and that's the one through Liquid Edition. Still awaiting approval from Federal Highways, which I reported on, and expect a decision next week or the week after. And they're about 39% complete on the Brushy Fork water line extension. Gateway West Engineering and Surveying, Jay met with District 7 today, and more to come after tomorrow. As another follow-up with them tomorrow. West Virginia DOH Brushy Fork Water Line Replacement Project. This is the end correlation with that third lane project that the state will be doing on Brushy Fork. The water line betterment agreement was executed yesterday at the water board meeting. The water department has paid the DOH $39,951.72 to upgrade the existing 6-inch water line to a combination 10-inch and 8-inch water line that will allow the project or the city more readily provide water to the southwestern portions of the existing water distribution system. Project's expected to be advertised late August 2018. And lastly, under Jay's report is Adrian Public Service District Water System Improvements began the preliminary design and development of cost estimate to upgrade approximately 5,500 linear feet of 8-inch water line from Route 20 South Stony Run intersection to the Adrian PSD master meter pit just below the Buckhannon Upshur High School. That's all I have as a report, Mayor, unless there's questions.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
The contract that was awarded by the state last month, I believe, on the 88 ADA intersect points. Of course, we started out thinking it was just going to be the 16 downtown, but it ended up being something vastly more all along Route 20. They're going to try to start that project yet this fall and complete it by late spring next year. Isn't that right?
That's the indication we got. That may be a little ambitious, I think, on the fall schedule, but that's the indication we're getting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any questions for Jerry? Guys have been working hard. Sedgwick Street sidewalk is fantastic. North Florida Street, Traders Alley, they've been working overtime. Thanks, Jerry. Tell the guys we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up is our Director of Finance and Administration, Ann Jenkins.
Okay. First of all, I want to let you all know that we did receive the $102,000 grant check from the West Virginia Culture and History. So that finally was received, and as you know, we were granted a $61,000 additional grant for the theater. We've been in audits the last few weeks, the regular annual state audit, and we also had a Brook Street audit last week. When they reviewed all the what they do is they review all the wages for fiscal year 17, 18, all the departments, and then bill or deduct for the differences in each department because we have to estimate those wages. So when they finished up, I just received the results today, and they said we owed an additional $13,000. So I contacted our agent. The two major areas they saw change in was waste collection and volunteer fire department. So we're trying to get some details in their worksheets on, my numbers don't jive with their numbers, so we're trying to work that out. I'll let you know more about that in the next meeting. I always like to let you know invoices for general fund before I go too far on other departments. When you get ready to approve your bills, the invoices for you to approve of note are $2,659 was spent for 2 computers at the police department. $6,408 was spent towards concrete at the North Florida Street project sidewalk. $3,111 for the concrete at the Traders Alley project, and $1,555 for concrete at the Sedgwick Street project. That was an assistance program. The balances in our departments for revenues, expenses, and cash balance in all of our departments for July. Waste collection had cash balance of $627,000. CDs or savings of $57,000 plus $64,000 that's held for a bond, landfill bond. The Waste Board tasked me to seek financing options for a 2019 International Road Tractor they just opened the bids for in the amount of $124,800. Revenues for waste was $246,000 and expenses was $246,000 in revenues, $306,000 expenses. And the waste collection is taking applications for labor at this time due to Mr. Kidd's retirement. Water Board cash balances July, $258,773. Plus, we received a check from ACP for $1,522,000 for those improvements to the water system. CDs and savings, $956,000. Revenues for the month of July, $247,000. Expenses, $203,000. Sanitary Board cash balances July, $377,000. In cash balances, CDs or savings, $113,000. Revenues were $189,000. Expenses were $167,000. We just opened bids for that department this evening for a truck, and it's going to be about $60,000 for the new truck. They still have to review the bids. Sanitary Board also took applications for a labor due to one of their employees quitting. The West Virginia Purchasing Division had a seminar to explain their opportunities they have to assist local governments. The surplus property section has several items that they can purchase, that we can purchase at reduced prices, such as office equipment, furniture, and other things. The warehouse is located at Dunbar. The public can also purchase there, but you can get chairs for $10 and desks for $50, and they wanted to let us know about that. They also, the division of purchasing, they wanted to explain their contracts that we can piggyback off of if they've negotiated contracts with anyone for anything, office equipment, vehicles, cleaning supplies, then we can piggyback off of those contracts and receive the same price that the state does. And they told us how to go about doing that. Okay, now the finale. The Revenue Review Committee has met a few times, and on that committee is, you might recall, the council appointed the mayor, C.J. Rylands, Dave Thomas, Barb Hinkle, and myself to do that task. So our task was to look at both revenues and expenses for general fund. The last 5 years, our expenses and our revenues have been pretty much equal. So there's not much room for much more improvement, as you can imagine. Costs keep going up, but our revenues aren't really increasing that much. So we are looking at other revenue streams. We're going to have a public forum on September the 4th at the safety complex. at 7 p.m. But we identified about $1 million that we need for various things, the parks, the streets, public safety.
Is that annually, Andy?
Annually, yes, annually, $1 million annually. We also identified for revenue streams, we were searching through those. We could increase those. I mean, cities are kind of tied on what they can collect in fees. Right now we have a fire fee, a police fee, and a public safety complex fee. And we collect about $150,000 on the fire fee, $75,000 on the police fee, and $94,000 on the public safety complex fee. We've identified places where we need additional funds, and we need around $100,000 more in our parks, parking lots, and cemetery. We need about $300,000 for street and sidewalk maintenance, $200,000 for street projects. We would need to set $100,000 aside in a reserve each year for the fire department for equipment. And we've hired 3 firemen in 2015. We hired another an additional police officer in this year. We, of course, have the Stockert Youth Center. We see some additions there that we need. Their programs continue to grow, and we need about $71,000 there. Stormwater is one of the bigger things that need to be addressed. The city would have the ability to add a stormwater fee onto citizens. Now, this stormwater fee could be assessed to anyone that's in the watershed. And Buckhannon, a third of Buckhannon is in a floodplain. That flows out into the county, so we would have the ability to assess those citizens as well. We also have the ability to try to attempt to collect the first due area for the fire department. That is the area outside the city limits that the fire department answers to, which we don't receive any funding for at this time. So in those revenue streams, we identified we might collect, if we assessed $100 roughly to each structure, we might collect about $150,000 a year. If we double the police fee, we collect about $75,000. If we take in first due, and when you take in first due, that means the fire fee out in the county would be reduced in the county. So the volunteers may not get that money. But we collect about $150,000 there if we leave the rates the same as we are collecting in the city limits. The other option we have is to adjust around on our retail B&O. Right now we have $1 million exemption on our retail B&O. And then we have a tiered system. If we completely remove the $1 million B&O, and the reason we have the $1 million B&O on there, exception, is to help the smaller businesses, that they wouldn't be paying this B&O. And then we change the fee, the tiered fee, we could collect $494,000. The other option we have is we are a home rule city, and we have the option to try to collect the 1% sales tax. In the 1% sales tax, we estimate we would collect about $1 million versus if we went to this other option, $800,000 to $869,000 is what we're estimating. The Revenue Review Committee really doesn't want to go back to the citizens again, but we also want to have this forum to get public input and ideas from the public. Maybe they don't like the way we think we should adjust our numbers. We want to hear that. So Revenue Review can weigh in on this. Any citizens I expect will show up. If they're interested, they'll want to show up. And that's what we've got now, our Revenue Review Committee.
I think one of the reasons that the rest of the committee can weigh in as well, one of the reasons that the Revenue Review Committee has reached a consensus in advocating for the 1% sales tax. First, the latest number, and it's increased. When we first started kicking this about 6-8 months ago, there were 33 cities in West Virginia. that had gone through the steps of establishing the sales tax. That's now up to 43,
43.
with additional cities in the queue. The municipal league conference that I just attended, people just kind of looked at me funny when they had a map that showed the cities that had it and didn't have it, and we stick out like a sore thumb. They're like, how do you do this? So it's not just, we're not just following the leader relative to this. We've managed to pay our bills and still be a progressive community. But there are so many needs, and the best adjective to describe the last 5 years of general fund monies is stagnant. We have a mechanism available to us with our utilities to apply to the Public Service Commission and increase sewer fees, water fees, garbage fees. But that mechanism is not available to the general fund. And those needs, obviously, and the cost to discharge, execute those needs and duties, it's not getting any less. There's less and less of what you might have to carry over and apply to the next year's efforts, less and less every year. So CJ and Dave Thomas can weigh in, but I think the other thing with the sales tax, so much of what we do as a community, the expense is incurred almost exclusively by the residents of the city of Buckhannon. Who uses our streets and parks? Who goes to Walmart and Lowe's and all these other places? 75% of the usage comes from people outside the corporate limits. In many instances, people that don't even reside in Upshur County, or college students and their families that don't actually live in Buckhannon but nevertheless go to these places. As we've talked to some of the other communities that have tracked this collection of sales tax, probably 75% of it is going to be paid for by people that do not live as residents in the city of Buckhannon. Now think about that for a minute. For once, maybe the only time ever, others would be paying to improve those things that everyone comes to enjoy, not just the residents of Buckhannon. So with that said, Mr. Thomas or Mr. Ryland, do you want to weigh in?
I think Amby summarized the conversations we've been having, and I mean, I have flip-flopped, I guess, on this issue as a businessman in Elkins. When they were proposing it, I was not for it because it was going to increase the cost of everything I sell by 1%. The main thing that bothered me about it is that they would not identify any of the way they were going to spend any of that money. So we've tried to do that due diligence and identify where this money would be allocated, and so everyone would know that it's not, we don't think that we know what's in the best interest of the community, and that's why we'll come together and have this public conversation. But it hasn't impacted our business in Elkins, and I've come to the conclusion that healthy communities need to take chances or risks or do things that secure their future when things are going well, not when your back's against the wall.
That's right.
And you have to scramble and finance and cut back, and you know, this municipality has been a very efficient and effective organization for a long time, and I would like to enhance that and strengthen the foundation through the items that Amby identified in her summary, and so I support this, and it's, you know, everything I sell will be taxed at a higher rate than outside the city limits, but I don't want to be outside the city limits. I want to be our business where we're at in our downtown, and try to take this to the citizens and see what the feedback is.
Mr. Thomas?
Well, I think Amby and you, David, and CJ covered pretty well. I did mention in the last meeting that I thought it would be important for this committee to continue for the future, because I think there are a lot of challenges that are going to involve the Buckhannon City and other municipalities. And when you look at the infrastructure, or you look at adding on to the eventually the Stockard complex and what we're doing with Colonial Theater, I think there's impacts eventually with staffing. And we also need to take a look at how do we continue to provide for opportunities for repair and maintenance and so forth. And most organizations don't do that. It's very enlightening oftentimes to go to I know the water board the other day, we met, and every municipality in the state is facing to some degree deterioration in their infrastructure for water. The same thing is true with sanitation and storm drains and so forth. And normally there's not any kind of account out there reserved to take a look at what the future is going to cost, rather than have your backs against the wall, as CJ has said. And I think that's important for council to continue to assess that. It's something that's very much needed. Jerry Arnold provided a couple of pages that were in more detail than what Amby summarized earlier, and it's very enlightening what he was talking about as far as the different aspects of our infrastructure, paving, sidewalks, how long. He indicated, for example, doing paving on a street the last 25 years. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think it's probably less than 25 years because of our location we are geographically. But when you put something out there, it's going to start deteriorating fairly soon. So you have to take a look at what you're going to do for the future. I look at this as an investment, as CJ was saying, that you want to continue to keep improving because a lot of organizations, a lot of municipalities aren't improving. And as we finish the Technical Entrepreneurial Center, we've got a couple of banks that are moving in town. We've got the Armory that's going to be in a different kind of situation as far as business. Buckhannon is a really attractive organization, a city rather, and I think we need to move forward. And as much as I don't like to increase fees or put a tax on, you get what you pay for. And I think our investments have been fairly good in the past, excellent in fact, and we need to continue to do that. And also with our culture and our socialization, I can't imagine being law enforcement today or a firefighter. The statistics that you've seen with the fire department and what's going on there as far as their responses and how many they have now compared to 20 years ago. And the same with law enforcement, what they're doing with the kind of culture we have today, the response they have to make and so forth. We need to be aware of that. And I think one of the things we should consider for the future, and I'm not advocating this now, but at what point in time do you have a fire fee or police fee that should be paying for a certain percentage of that department? I don't know what the other cities are doing, but it'd be interesting to look at. But it's a good committee. I support what's been recommended. We talked about some other things like, should we go back out to subcontract the cemetery, the grass cutting and so forth, because what happens is we have seasonal workers. When we don't have those seasonal workers, some of our other full-time employees are taking off projects that we really need them to continue on. So, I've even advocated several times that we consider one more person for Jerry Arnold's crew. But, that's something we'll be discussing for the future. So.
Thanks, Dave. So again, as Amby has noted, we're not deciding anything tonight. September 4th, that's the Tuesday after Labor Day, at 7 o'clock at the Community and Training Room. We'll have a dedicated an hour and a half or so for sharing with the public and weighing in on the various options that we have examined, the one that we're going to recommend, I would also note that there are a couple of really substantial hoops that we will need to jump through if this council comes to give the thumbs up on proceeding with the sales tax. Not the least of which, I think the Home Rule Board meets 3 times a year right now. And we got to get on their agenda, we got to present things to them. And the way this is set up with the state tax department, the opportunity to get the state tax department to give the thumbs up, even if Home Rule Board approves it, and we believe they would, this is going to take a year to a year and a half. We're talking 15 to 18 months before we can put anything in place and start collecting that first dollar of this new sales tax, if in fact we adopt it. So it's not anything that's going to happen quick or easy. There's a series of hoops to jump through, but we want, in the spirit of transparency and being candid about it, we've spent a lot of time looking at the possible options, and the one that we are strongly leaning toward right now is adoption of this 1% sales tax that so many other cities, virtually all of the cities around us, have already incorporated. So, more to follow. Barb, I didn't call upon you. Did you want to add anything to the mix? Barb is Amby's right-hand gal when it comes to stuff, so more to follow. Any members of council have any questions or anything right now? We're not doing anything tonight.
I don't have any questions, but I commend the committee and the way you all worked it together, talked about it, and you can't wait till it all falls apart. You got to plan ahead. And if it takes us a year and a half to even get it in place, we're just still further behind the 8 ball. So, and that's what we're here for. You know, for now and for the future, we have to make the decisions, which is what's best for the city, for now and the future. So, I'll be there.
I've spoken, not publicly yet, but I've spoken to several people up here in the past in favor of a 1% sales tax, because even before I lived in Buckhannon, I can vouch that many people call this town. If you're going to town, you come to Buckhannon, and people come. I know I'm kind of beating the drum that's already been beat, but using the amenities that we have here, and those of us who live in town and pay all the fees and the taxes into the general fund are supporting the entire weight of that. And it's to me, it makes the most sense to spread that cost amongst many people who enjoy Buckhannon as opposed to the few of us who actually live in city limits.
Anybody else want to comment about this at this time?
The only thing I'll say, you know, and I'm not speaking for or against what's been said so far, but I think we need to also keep in mind, and I'm sure the committee is, and I'm sure we as a council will, but I think it's worth saying, we don't want to further divide being inside versus outside of the city limits when it comes to future development. If we have a fee structure and a tax structure that isn't attractive versus being outside the city limits, and I mean, let's face it, if development takes place just west of town along US 33, those folks basically outside of municipal police protection have access to all of the services that a business inside the corporate limits does. And, you know, I have an issue with that because, you know, it's like buying the cow, or it's like getting the milk for free without buying the cow. And that's where, I see benefit to the first due fire fee. Our neighbors to the east collect nearly $1 million from their first due fire fee. 373,000 of that comes from outside their corporate limits. The rest comes from within. So, you know, and we also, you know, we have a police fee that is $1.50, and that hasn't been altered since the 80s. And I understand what CJ has said and what the mayor has said about not going back to the citizens. I'm sympathetic to that as a citizen, and you know, I know that the bulk that we all share as what we're paying for, but you know, the cost to run a police department in the 1980s has changed from then to now, and that fee hasn't. So I'm often advocating in the state of West Virginia that we shouldn't put all of our eggs in the coal or the natural gas basket. We need to have a diversified economy to have a healthy state. I think we've got to have a diversified fee structure to have a healthy city, and I think we need to consider, you know, a fee structure toward the police and the fire that increases after 3 to 5 years to help keep up with inflation. You know, I talked to JB about the fire department. You know, you could easily say that, you know, over a year, each year, apparatus inflation is around 5%. So 3 years, it's 15%. And if we haven't changed our fee structure, that's 15% more we have to pay to keep our public safety afloat. So that, just some thoughts. Like I said, I'm not speaking for or against anything that's been said tonight. I look forward to the 4th to hear what the community has to say. Those are just some of my thoughts.
Can I respond?
Yep, Dave.
Thanks, Robbie. That's one reason, Robbie, I suggested that this committee continue. I think it should be an ongoing committee because I think that we will have some cost burdens ahead, and the sales tax won't address that. The citizens, the residents, will at some point in time have to pay higher police and fire fees. It may not happen for 3 or 4 or 5 years. But part of what you were saying is we ought to consider at some point in time, and it will happen. It won't happen in my lifetime, I'm sure, but metro government. Mm-hmm. And the cost pressures that we're going to see in our society today, we're going to have to become much more efficient. And right now, government, generally speaking, is not very efficient. There are exceptions. But when you're looking at Buckhannon and Upshur County, we're probably one of the best models in the state to have metro government.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've advocated that for over 25 years. I was on a committee years ago, and, you know, being somewhat naive, I made that suggestion, I about got hung. But I think it's something, you know, we should not have turf battles in government. And we're all going to have to come together, as Mayor McCauley says continually. I think metro government will happen sometime in the future.
I agree. I mean, we're very fortunate here that we don't have a lot of duplication of services. I mean, if you look at Harrison County, look at the duplication of services with Clarksburg, Nutter Fort, Stonewood, Anmore, Bridgeport. Look, they're all providing water, they're all providing fire, they're all providing police. I mean, it's really, you know, there are places in the state where this would, the metro government concept would work wonders. Here is perfect because we don't have any other municipality in Upshur County to step over. You know, we are the only municipality in Upshur County, and we you know, it would be theoretically easy here as far as on paper. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Dave. I think the discussions should be ongoing. I think we definitely need to not. We've got to see this very long range because the city of Buckhannon is going to be around for quite some time, and services for sure are not going to stop inflating.
Pam, anything to add?
Well, I've sat here in council for years, and I used to be against the 1% sales tax. And we need to be progressive. There's a lot of changes that have been made over the years that I've been here, and I'm starting to lean toward the 1% sales tax because it's a fair tax. And other cities are using it for a reason, and they must know something we don't know. So I'm not saying I'm definitely for the 1% sales tax yet, but I'm not against it like I used to be. And I look forward to see how many people come out on September 4th so we can talk about it, see what the citizens want to do. So.
Anybody have any questions for Amby? Mary, something else?
No, good job, Amy.
Not
And
just-
crew.
I forgot you were still standing there.
Yeah, she gave the report.
I do have one question. Workers' comp. Let me go back to that just for a second. When you talk about increasing, is that the rate? The
No,
base rate is increasing?
No, the rate is not increasing.
Okay.
their gross salary number, you know how you have to estimate the salary?
Okay, I want to make sure.
They came back
Okay.
with higher numbers, and I don't know how they got those.
Okay.
That
Now,
we have a question.
I'm sure Brick Street alluded to the fact that the West Virginia deficit surcharge will be going off all policies on 1/1 of 19, and that is a percentage. It's about 9%. So your smaller policies, obviously, you're not going to see a lot, but a larger policy like what we have could see a few $1,000, several $1,000 in savings. So
Yeah.
that's something to look forward to, regardless as to when the policy renews. As of 1/1, it will be recalculated with the West Virginia deficit surcharge being taken off.
That's very good.
Yeah.
No, we usually get glowing reports. We're pretty proactive in our safety programs here.
I also want to tell CJ it's okay to be a flip-flop.
Yeah, Dave's used to that.
Of
Hey,
experience.
if better information comes along, I'll be the first to take it, you know.
Thanks, Amy. Appreciate all the good work. Next up is our police chief, Matt Gregory. Chief, how's it going?
Good. How y'all tonight?
Good.
Hey, Matt.
A few things to report on. We continue to work diligently on the accreditation front with CALIA. The conference in Grand Rapids went very well. I was able to spend a pretty good portion of the time at the conference focusing a little more specifically on the Power DMS application, which, as you recall, is the solution that CALIA uses to upload not only policies but also the proofs. So I spent some one-on-one sessions with the techs from the Power DMS company, and I'm able to wrap my head around that a little more. I'm starting to learn quite a bit more about it as I move forward. One of the themes that I took away from this past conference was the development of systems. What I mean by that is mechanisms that are in place within the department in order to manage standards compliance. And that covers everything from your reports, your investigations, which we have some pretty good systems now. I know the Policy Review Committee has been able to take a look at some of those as we've met throughout the summer. Within those systems, as we move forward, we've been able to identify better ways of reporting. You guys have seen that, a couple examples of that in the monthly reports I've provided to you the last couple of months with our accidents and traffic enforcement. Other systems that we're beginning to look at a little closely involve everything from training, and that's all aspects of training from what's known as in-service or ongoing training that keeps up our law enforcement certification through the state of West Virginia, as well as what's known as shift briefing training. And this type of training focuses on things like officer safety issues, current events, current topics that may be problematic. Maybe there's an influx of drug activity. One example was something that's just been in the news. Last night it made national news, the large overdose that they had in New Haven, Connecticut. So when trends like that begin to pick up, especially in the area, we've seen situations like that, unfortunately, as close as Huntington and the surrounding area as well. We're able to identify that as a training issue and put it out to our officers in the form of bulletins, and the shift briefing is what CALIA calls it. And so we're exploring some systems that help to facilitate that. One such system is a software application that the fire department currently uses for very similar type training for the firemen as well. We're looking at adoption of that over on the police department side. So we're testing a couple of different systems in that regard. We're also looking at systems that focus on human resources, and that's everything from complaints on personnel, how that's managed, tracked. We're also looking at evaluations, early warning systems, and the like. And so we're beginning to test that, looking at those systems, setting up some demonstrations. I know I've talked to Amby about that specifically as far as the HR component goes, and she's expressed some interest in looking at that as well. So we'll continue to identify these systems that will help across the board with each of the standards that we're developing. Also along those lines, as we extend beyond that, we're also continuing our partnerships and communication with fellow law enforcement agencies within West Virginia specifically that are either accredited, and in that case that is Parkersburg Police Department, or in the process of being accredited. As you know, we've been working very closely with the Granville Police Department over the last several months in the CLIA process. We have been in communication with the accreditation manager at the Parkersburg Police Department as well. In fact, we're scheduled to go there next week and have a meeting. I've got a huge sheet of questions already that I'm taking, and they'll probably hate to see me coming when I have that. I'm not telling them in advance all the questions I have. We've also been in contact with Charlestown Police Department. That's the only other, beyond Granville and us, the only other agency in West Virginia that's in self-assessment right now. And so we will have plans to collaborate with them. And the hope is to form kind of a West Virginia coalition, if you will. We want to see all the CLIA agencies within West Virginia, not just one or two of us, but all of us, to collaborate in this regard and focus on these standards. So that's our efforts as we reach out and have these meetings. Unfortunately, at this time, and I've shared this with the Policy Review Committee, CLIA has what's known as PACs. PACs are support networks within given states that serve as networking points of contact, as well as helping with mock assessments for agencies that are seeking accreditation or reaccreditation. Currently, there is no PAC that exists in West Virginia right now. All the states around us have PACs, and we're exploring that as well. But we would like to see something form in West Virginia. So these are our efforts as we reach out to begin those conversations. Shifting gears from CLIA, on National Night Out. National Night Out was held last week. Another very successful year. We've been holding this event for 15 years now. Great event. It's a great community policing event where we interact with the community. Folks get to come out, get to know us on a more personal basis, learn about the services that are available to them. We collaborate with a wide variety of other public safety agencies, fire departments, EMS, as well as other government agencies. We also partner with community organizations, groups, as well as businesses who continually year after year donate either monies or other items that we use for door prizes. And we're very appreciative to each and every individual as well as organization that participates in this because it's a very worthwhile event, a very successful event. This year we saw about 500 people come out to the event. Again, it's held at the Upshur County Recreational complex there at the pool. A little down from last year. I attribute a lot of that to the rain that went on throughout the day. But kind of even some folks within our own organization was questioning whether or not we could have it. And I said, well, that's a typical West Virginia weather. The rain will come and go. It'll be okay. And it ended up being nice. It was nice weather. And all told, though, 500 people was a really good turnout. And I think all that was there had a really good time. Recently been in contact with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Wheeling, West Virginia. They've reached out to me and named me to the Anti-Terrorism Advisory Council for Northern District of West Virginia. Accepted that and will be a representative for this region. The focus of the Anti-Terrorism Advisory Council is to serve as a body for information sharing amongst local, state, and federal agencies, as well as a networking and coordinating body for policy issues, anti-terrorism issues.
Who did you say named you? I'm sorry.
The U.S. Attorney.
Okay, thank you.
And then finally, tomorrow, again, we'll partner with Campus Life at Wesleyan College we will reach out. We're actually going to them this year. Last few years, they've come to us. We're going to meet with the RAs just before the school begins. And we're going to talk about a variety of topics, safety issues, drug issues, and just another opportunity to get to know us on a more personal level, network with them, get them our contact information. And so that's been very successful in the past, and we will continue that partnership tomorrow. We've been in meetings already leading up to this with Campus Life staff as well as other Wesleyan administration staff leading up to the school year, so we have a very good working relationship with them in that regard. And that's all I have tonight, unless there's questions.
Matt, do you think that now a few months into the new drug task force, does that, I know a lot of times it takes weeks or months for things to play out as focus is made on particular suspects. Do you have any doubts about we're doing the right thing by being involved with this? Is your assessment such that you think we're starting to see some dividends being paid?
I do, and I've long said that, you know, just given our experience and the things that we see day to day out here, that there's definitely enough of an issue to provide work, and in this regard, full-time work for a task force. And we're certainly seeing that. I don't have any specific numbers to be able to give you. I wouldn't want to quote something and be off base, but I will say that the board of directors for the task force meets every month, and we actually just had a meeting yesterday in Braxton County. We rotate between the 3 counties, and yesterday's was in Braxton County. And at each of those meetings, a coordinator's report is shared with us. And the coordinator is the supervisor of the task force. He's a state police officer that each of the task force members report to. He oversees their each of their reports, their activities, and he devises all that into a report that he shares with the board. And the numbers that I've seen come across the meetings are just right impressive. And I say that especially because the task force started from the ground up in April, just 4 months ago. And so going from 0 to where it's at now, and you know, I know that without assigning a specific number to it, as we move forward with potential activity on down the road, there are several people that have been identified as through the investigations that could be charged. And you know, and obviously more on that as it unfolds. It continues to be an ongoing situation, but there has been a lot of good work done. And like you said, I think just seeing that, even just looking at the raw numbers in and of itself, is convincing to me, and I think it would be to anybody else, that it's definitely worth our endeavor.
Sure. Any other questions for Matt Greger?
Mayor, I just have a question.
Sure.
If the chief's going over to visit with the RAs, which is your resident people that live there, and at the residence halls with the students, do you talk about parking?
We could, yeah.
Well, I don't mean
Actually,
lecture, do or don't. I'm talking about, you know, if you have any questions about parking.
Sure, yeah.
You know, buy a sticker, park way over there, you know, and just be courteous. And it's not that they're not, okay?
Right.
It's just that that would be an opportune time, don't you think?
What we do with that is we talk, like I said, about a variety of topics.
Okay.
But the best exchange is when we open it up for questions, and that's really where we go beyond the spiel that we give as far as the safety talk, the rights and responsibilities talk, and it really creates dialogue on a whole host of topics that comes up, and that could certainly be one of them.
And I think you should take this young lady with you and let her go, because she's with the volunteer program, and you might meet a lot of contacts and helpers.
I tell you, we try to actively recruit at the college every year for VIPs, whether it be through the criminal justice program. It's usually through the criminal justice program, but we're open to anybody that has an interest. Absolutely.
I'd like to make one comment.
Sure, go ahead.
Matt, I want to thank you and your officers for what you do, and it's a very difficult job as far as law enforcement. And I would ask all the residents, the citizens of both Buckhannon and Upshur County, that if you go on your cell phone or your laptop and take a look at what's out there in our supposedly culture and social community, the police, I believe, law enforcement have a very uphill battle facing them for the future. It's a tidal wave of disrespect for authority. It happens in our school system today. It's pervasive, and I don't know how we change the tide. And I think the law enforcement ought to consider, both from the federal and the state and the county and municipalities, what can you all do? What can we all do to try to stem that tide? Because it's billions of dollars that are in this against you all sometimes. And it's scary. And I didn't realize the pervasiveness of it until about 3 weeks ago. And it's almost like propaganda. It's unbelievable. And I think people would be shocked if they got on and listened to an hour of rap music or see some of the other things out there. I'm glad I can't see sometimes. This is one of those times. But I commend you for what you're doing and your officers, and you need lots of help.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else for Chief Gregory? Matt, tell the guys to be safe first and foremost. I've heard that line used a lot recently, both in our police and fire ranks, that the most important thing is to go home at the end of your shift. That's the most important thing. All right, next up is our city attorney, Tom O'Neill, and then JP's not on the agenda, but I'm going to call upon him to introduce us to another short topic here in just a minute.
Thanks. I'm going to begin by, I'm sorry I was a little late to the meeting. I was unavoidably detained for a couple of minutes. Aside from matters that have been previously discussed by other department heads that participated in, the primary matter that I'd like to bring your attention tonight before we get into matters later on under Section G of the agenda is the draft drug house ordinance, as it's been shorthanded. We give it a shorthand appellation. We held a meeting on that yesterday, had some discussion. This ordinance is largely based on the ordinance from the city of Martinsburg. I would reiterate to you that it is a draft, even to the point that in my speedy typing after the meeting, I've already noticed I need to move a couple things. But essentially, this is the meat of the ordinance. Certain properties, and we'll talk about which properties they are, may be declared a public nuisance under the ordinance, and orders of abatement issued to require remediation and bring those structures and the activities going on in those structures within compliance of the law. The properties that are declared a public nuisance, I'll just read from the ordinance itself. Any promise, and this is again primarily lifted from the Martinsburg ordinance, which has been adopted by Parkersburg, Huntington, and those two municipalities, and enacted Martinsburg's ordinance word for word, and possibly a couple of others as well that slip my mind at the moment. But we've made our own kind of tweaks to it. So any premises used for prostitution, illegal gambling, illegal possession, storage, or delivery of, or trafficking in controlled substances or other illegal drug activity, and then we've added certain other offenses, manufacturing of a controlled substance, possession with intent to deliver, delivery of a controlled substance, or the dispatch of first responders to respond and treat a drug overdose, 2 instances of those events taking place on property within a 24-month period, within a 2-year period, 2 instances would render the property subject to being declared a public nuisance. And certain city officials, particularly the chief of police, the zoning enforcement officer, the city engineer, or any other authorized representative of the city, can bring an action in the municipal court to require abatement of the public nuisance. And part of that is issuing an order of abatement. That order is required to require the owner or occupant of the property, the person under the control of the property, to take measures that are reasonably calculated to prevent the recurrence of the illegal activity. The order of abatement may also authorize the issuance of search warrants. And now, from a legal perspective, I don't think that's anything new. If there is if a delivery of a controlled substance occurs on a piece of property, the police already have the authority to seek the issuance of a search warrant. This just expands that authority to seek a search warrant to the city engineer and the zoning enforcement officer pursuant to this ordinance. Penalties are fines only. This does not provide for any kind of forfeiture of property. Only orders of abatement that are reasonably calculated to prevent recurrence of the illegal activity and to bring the property back into standards that will not put our first responders at risk, not diminish the property value of neighboring properties. Questions?
Yeah, I've got 2. My first one is in Article 1, Section A.
Yeah. That's one of the areas where I need to.
Okay, so the illegal gambling.
Right.
Now, I haven't read the law on gambling, but if Robbie, I'm more of a Monopoly guy, but say Robbie has his buddies over for cards and they throw $20 on the table, and next thing you know, Chief Gregory's busting in the house looking for a deck of cards, because that's the required abatement. I mean, is that what we're talking about here?
Well, if it happens twice within if the game is rated twice within a 24-month period.
Just making sure that my ridiculous straw man version is actually could potentially happen.
The Chief Gregory could issue an order of abatement reasonably calculated to prevent recurrence, which could include the issuance of a search warrant, and that order of abatement would probably take the form of, don't do this again.
Do we think
that would be abating the nuisance?
Do we think that the gambling thing might be a little far? And then my second question is under Article 2, Section C. When you say measures that are reasonably calculated, well, that's kind of that you can be pretty arbitrary with what's reasonable.
Well, that's a legally defined standard.
Can you give me the definition of that?
Reasonably calculated. If something is reasonably calculated, the order has to be approximately designed. I mean, I can't do it without using more legalese.
Well,
approximately designed to address the problem that it is trying to
But that
remedy.
feels like it could be arbitrary.
Yeah, reasonably is not.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. A judge or whoever.
Matters like this.
No offense, Chief Gregory, or whoever's sitting in that position could say, well, it's reasonable to do X, Y, and Z, and then do something like break down the door to take Robbie's deck of cards away from him.
Well, unfortunately, I mean, there's a long history of common law that defines what kind of police activity is reasonable in light of certain offenses versus others, and that is a body of law that is built up for decades that this ordinance would be subject to.
So I guess the statement I would make would be, it would be nice if we had more clearly defined based on the type of crime. That's just my opinion.
Well,
This is a homework assignment, by the way. You're all supposed to, we're not doing anything with this.
no, this is only
Right.
discussion.
I'm just throwing out my concerns.
The ordinance is drafted the way that it is in order to give the enforcement agency the greatest latitude possible to craft an adequate response to what is presented to them as far as a violation goes. I understand the.
So would Chief Gregory be the one, just for, since we're talking, in this instance, would he be the one determining which is a reasonable measure? Who's gonna determine
the chief, whomever is issuing the order of abatement, so and in the ordinance, and
It could be
again,
the
this is a
city zoning
policy.
officer.
It could be Vince, it could be.
Does that set them up for criticism that, well, so-and-so's taking it harder on me because he's got this ability to make an arbitrary determination about what a reasonable measure is because he doesn't like me?
Well, I mean, that risk exists in the enforcement of any criminal statute. And it's balanced against essentially prosecutorial discretion. So it's a policy, and these are policy questions to be decided by the body, but what you have on one hand is language like measures reasonably calculated to prevent the recurrence on one hand versus putting the enforcement agencies in a very particular box on the other, where the prescribed order might, on paper, in black and white, be called for in the ordinance, but might be overkill in a real-life situation. And so the reasonable calculation language allows the enforcement agency to tailor the remedy appropriately. And it is an exercise in trust with respect to the enforcement agent to do that in a proper way. It would be up to council and ultimately the municipal court or the circuit court, if it were to escalate to that point, to then exercise oversight in how that's enforced. But I guess that's the best response I can give to the question.
Tom, we had talked about an inspection element too, that I don't think is in there, that if there was a determination made that this meets the criteria of a drug house, that the state methamphetamine lab folks would be contacted and there might be interim inspections made that otherwise wouldn't be authorized under our current municipal ordinances, to let somebody, whether it's the health officer or the code enforcement officer, to make these inspections in a periodic kind of way.
Well, I think I would suggest that the way the ordinance is drafted currently, inspections can be part of the order of abatement that is reasonably tailored to prevent recurrence.
Yeah, I might like
so
seeing that
if you want
specifically set out.
If you want to authorize them at the discretion of the enforcing officer or require them in every case, that's a policy.
Yeah.
Is that what section D say? The order of abatement may also authorize the issue of search warrants reasonably calculated to determine whether the nuisance has been abated or whether the order of the court has been obeyed.
Well, that authorizes the enforcing agent to approach the municipal court and authorizes the municipal court to issue a search warrant. To do that, we're permitting an inspection in the ordinance itself would kind of shortcut that that step and allow inspections to be part of the
Without
order of abatement
warrants.
without going through the
You
municipal.
might think of the property after a determination that you had the two incidents. It's like the property is on probation. And, your probation officer could swing by and do a check. That's kind of the way I see this playing out. Other questions for Tom? Again, this is a rough draft. Hi, Matt. Didn't even see you back there.
I'm stealthy like that.
Old eyes. Stealthy. I like that.
No, I haven't really followed this whole thing real closely because I'm kind of ambivalent about it. And as a whole, I mean, to be honest, I just see it kicking people around town and they'll pop up somewhere. It's just gonna make Matt Gregory's job harder, but if that's what you want to do, that's what we'll do. But the part with the overdoses, I'm wondering, one, if that would conflict with the state's Good Samaritan laws, and two, just the reason those laws were passed was that the overwhelming majority of people who use opiates use them in groups, they use them with other people, but when they're found dead, they're alone. because they get abandoned, because people don't want to call first responders when somebody's overdosing. And, my thoughts are, if that stays in here, somebody's gonna die because of this. Somebody's gonna not want to, call first
call EMS for an
responders.
overdose because they're afraid of well,
Yeah, anything
you know,
like that. I mean, it follows
I
the
think it's a
same
fair
path,
point,
just with the.
ultimately a policy decision for the body to make. I guess I'd only suggest in response that those instances are not going to be that doesn't occur on owner-occupied property in most cases, does it?
Plenty of people die in their own house from overdoses. Was it their house or their parents' house? Somebody
So I'm
overdoses
not
in their
sure I'm
parents'
following
house.
what the concern is that.
Well,
That somebody won't call 911 when somebody overdoses because they're concerned.
roommate, for example.
Yeah.
Because their property will be evaded if they do.
Or, yeah.
Okay.
And then they'll be on probation and they can be searched without warrants.
So it has to happen twice in 24 months?
Twice in 24 months.
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens, a second overdose can happen within hours, because what happens is EMS shows up, they shoot somebody full of Narcan, it knocks all it sends them into immediate withdrawal, which is the worst illness they've ever experienced in their life, and they know the only way to make that illness go away is to use again, so they overdose again, because they're trying to get well again.
Yeah.
And it just,
I think it's important to observe, though, that of all of the things on the gamut of activities that could happen to a drug house, other places talking about condemnation and confiscatory stuff, that's not in this ordinance. All we're talking about is turning the lights on a particular place and empowering other inspections to occur to try to dissuade that kind of activity. I mean, we've had, and I'm not meaning to pick on a particular property, but we've had one property in particular on Cleveland Avenue, just up the street from where your place is, where we had a shooting, and the guy's seriously injured, and within 6 weeks of that same guy that was shot, in response to first responders who are resuscitating him from an overdose, one of our police officers is injured responding to that same individual at that very same location.
So I'm not opposed to the whole.
Yeah, I know.
It's just that one little piece with the overdoses,
Yeah.
I think could kill
Yeah.
somebody. The rest of it, I could care less. I mean, and I understand why you want to do it, I just don't want sure how it affects
There
it.
is
But that
another
doesn't
thing
matter.
to weigh in the mix.
Yeah.
And the last thing we want to do is dissuade anyone from reaching out to first
Personal
responders.
experience with that, about 15 years ago, I overdosed. And my brain was still working fine. My body, I was seizing, and it went on for a couple minutes, and I got to listen to the discussion in the room about what to do with my body. They were, should they were throwing me in the dumpster behind Safeway, or if they threw me in the Delta Mendota Canal, I would wash up in Los Angeles in about 3 days and nobody knew where I came from. And, so calling 911 wasn't on anybody's radar.
Well, I'm glad you figured it out. Did you keep in touch with those folks after you came back?
It's the life of an addict, you just laugh it off and keep going, so. But like I said, it was pre-recovery.
Well, we appreciate your insight relative to this, and as we advance these further drafts, and nothing's going to take place tonight, and
Yeah, I know.
probably won't take place in the next meeting or two.
Dave, can we cut the air back a little bit? I'm starting to get frostbite.
I'll second that.
Okay, so I just wanted to mention the overdose part.
Hey, the minutes reflect that the senior members of council.
I'd like to make a motion requiring Dave Thomas to wear flannel shirts for this.
I usually do, I forgot to bring it.
For the record, they'll have to write a story on this.
Thanks, Matt. We'll keep you in the
Breaking
loop.
news. Upshur Insider.
Bullwinkle thinks he's a
Do a
frostbite
store on
frog.
flip-floppers and curmudgeons, how's this? Because I'm both of them.
What else on this one, Tom? Anything that this is a
No,
homework.
penalties are fines only, and I guess the defendant, and the defendant is identified as the person who owns, manages, or controls the premises and who encourages or permits the illegal activity. So it's not a property owner unless they're knowledgeable about the activity that's going on their property. So one thing I think we hope to do with this ordinance, and I believe that the intent of the council is so that property owners who are engaged in business of renting, housing to others will take greater accountability for preventing crimes from occurring on their property.
Well, and vetting the people that they're renting the premises to.
Correct.
Being mindful, and I could see leases, standard leases modified to have language that would protect the landlord relative to such an ordinance.
I think there's common law that already says that if you're in violation of a criminal ordinance, you're liable to eviction under a lease, at least 30 days.
Other questions for Tom on the first draft of the drug house ordinance? Again, we're not taking any action tonight, may not, we'll continue to discuss it. This is something for meetings to come, and we'll definitely include Matt Kerner in that discussion. Okay, what else, Tom?
No, I'll be back for a number of items.
Hey, we're going to call you back here in just a few minutes, but I'd like to next call upon our Fire Chief, J.B. Kimball. J.B., I'll let you explain it, but J.B. has brought to our attention some non-emergency matters that the fire department is not a whole lot, but occasionally engaged in, that has become, I don't even want to use the word cumbersome, but we don't have a whole lot of spare time relative to any of our first responders. So I'll turn it over to you, and then I'll offer some comments.
Good evening, everybody. Last week I gave Teresa a form to put in your all's packet on a certain type of criteria of non-emergency response that we've been called to usually annually a dozen to 20 times a year, where emergency medical services contract to return a patient home from UHC, Morgantown, anywhere. And it's not necessarily a local EMS agency, it's usually out of town. And it's like they get 10 minutes out of Buckhannon and they'll call our 911 center and request the fire department to come and help lift the patient. Well, we're not always available now. When you're running 5 to 10 calls a day and doing accreditation work, this is not an essential fire department response. Not that it overwhelms us, but it also creates fuel usage, it creates workers' comp, and it creates issues to where we could get people hurt, taking people upstairs, or create a liability to the fire department if we end up dropping by accident this patient. We've come to the conclusion that if an EMS agency says we'll take this patient home, they're getting paid for that process. And after I wrote this, the officers and I and some other people had discussed some other non-emergency response criteria that the fire department has done for years, and some of it I don't understand. And a typical night on the Stone Cold Road, a tree falls across the road and they page the fire department to go cut the tree out of the road. Well, that's kind of the Department of Highways issue. I would like to review a lot of our non-emergency type criteria calls like that, and present that to council maybe at a later time.
Yeah, incident reports.
Yes.
People, insurance carriers and others are asking for incident
our
reports.
fee to insurance companies when they come in and get a fire report has been $5 ever since I've been in the fire department 29 years. Insurance companies will pay, I don't know what the allotment is, probably $20 now. Just stuff like that we provide to an organization that they need.
Well, born out of that discussion with JB, I asked Matt, I said, well, don't you guys give incident? Yeah, we give incident report. What do you charge for that? Well, so this is an opportunity for us to, in sort of a miscellaneous capture kind of a way, these not huge things, but to set forth a schedule, because I think that's what the state code requires. For example, we've for years had 75 cents a copy for FOIA requests. but we've never set that forth by ordinance. So there's FOIA requests, there's police incident reports, there's cutting a tree out or assisting a returning ambulance that's bringing somebody back from the hospital, or a fire incident report. There might be a dozen or more of these just loose end items that would be good to capture in one ordinance. And as time goes on, we can modify that ordinance. So.
Well, something else that, you know, is been happening a lot just in conversation. We've got some places that are repeat offenders, if you will, that have faulty alarm systems.
Yeah, that was one that was discussed the other day.
Yeah, they're responding, they're taking fuel and time and manpower to go to some of these places 3 and 4 times a week.
Yeah.
One in particular, Walmart, the shoppers they didn't even pay attention to what was going on because it happened so frequently out there. So
And
that's something
there
else.
are ordinances out there. Parksburg has one. They call it a nuisance alarm response. And you know, if it's so many times in a month, they charge a company or a building for that.
Let's go through police, fire, city hall operations, we'll do a little clearinghouse kind of a thing. We'll give it all to Tom and we can put it in a miscellaneous fee ordinance.
It's not just the cost, it's a liability issue too.
Yeah.
Safety issue,
Yeah.
because you may have somebody out there doing a non-emergency, cut up a tree, and all of a sudden you have a fire and you can't respond the way you need to.
Yeah, Knox box would be good to consider in that too.
Yeah, we're discussing that too. Actually, we had the first residential Knox box come into our area.
I was surprised. You told me the other day, 38 is what we have now?
Yeah, now 39.
38 Knox boxes.
Now we actually have residents that has one in our first new area, which is nice. I mean, because if they travel and they're not home, I mean, they have a fire alarm in their house. So.
And these boxes are indestructible, and they cost just a couple $100.
$300, around 300 change.
Okay.
And you know, we have the forms. If anybody's interested, come to the firehouse. You have to get it keyed to the Buckhannon Fire Department. We have a lock box in the fire engine that's a coded box that each of the career guys has a code. And when they punch the code in and take the key out to enter that Knox box, it sends a note to my computer who has it and how long it's out. So it's a secure system. So, yes.
Wow, that's a good service.
Anything else you want to report on? I know it's not your night, but if you got anything else you want to...
I'll keep them here late tonight since I got out early.
Any questions? Tell your guys to be safe too. Thanks, David.
Thanks, JB.
Okay. Correspondence and information, you got a whole bunch of stuff in there. The Buckhannon Fire Department non-emergency call charge thing that we just discussed. City PR regarding the CDC students that participated in the painting of our dog park dachshund last week. Announcement about Buckhannon River Fest that Callie told us about earlier this Saturday. You've got the maintenance agreements on the generator stuff that we've been talking about for many months. West Virginia Division of Highways informational meeting August 28th. That's for District 7. Jerry, are you going to attend that on behalf of the city or somebody?
I plan.
Plan on it? God willing and the creek don't rise, right? Yeah. Okay. You know the creek in that saying that doesn't have anything to do with a tributary of water. That was the Creek Indians. James Buckhannon, Secretary of State, was dispatched back to Washington, and he said, Mr. President, I'll be there, God willing, and the creek, as in the Indians, don't rise up against us. So just so you know that for future reference. Okay. Things you learn at a council meeting.
Did you get that?
I had no idea.
We didn't have any.
You could do a story on that,
Well, I heard
can you?
about-
Okay.
I heard that phrase.
And considering the name, I was waiting for you to tie that somehow back to here.
No. It was just a random fun factoid.
Isn't council entertaining?
Notice of town hall meeting on our revenue review committee for September 4. There is a disturbing report in here, if I can put my mitts on it again, on the number of cats that are being euthanized at our animal shelter. That's just
38.
Yeah, that's just 1 month. 38 kitties in one. We got to do better as a society in taking care
We got
of
a
our
crisis with dogs and cats.
On that, I was speaking last week with a lady who is heavily involved with the Barber County, the Animal Friends of Barber County. It's in Belington. she was telling me that they knew for a fact that the Upshur County Animal Shelter did not apply for some grant funding that they could have easily attained. Is that something that we could maybe have Callie take help with, or
let's share it with our folks?
because they received. They're much. It's a lot of it's based on demographics and population, and we're double the size of Barber County.
No, we got 2 counties now.
Yeah, right, that's right. So we're probably quadruple the size of what their service area is, and they got upwards of $10,000 to help with, spaying and neutering and shelter. Maybe that's something we could.
I think they used to do that. I remember them used to.
But they didn't even apply for the funding. So
It's just a sad thing when little animals end up that anyway. Free paper shred event is Saturday, September 18 out at Crossroads Recycling Center. And as was mentioned earlier by Amby, I thought we copied the check, but we did receive the $102,000 check from the Division of Culture and History for the Colonial Theater. Consent agenda consists of 3 items. We would be approving our minutes from the last regular meeting of August 2. You'd be approving your building and wiring permits, and you'd be approving the general fund payment of bills. I'd entertain a motion that we approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Skinner. May I have a second to his motion? Second. I have a second by Mrs. Albaugh. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing of the need for none, I'll call for that question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign, motion carries. That takes us down to strategic issues. We got a few of them to take up. First is ordinance 426. This would be the third and final reading of that ordinance. We had a public hearing a little bit ago. No one spoke about the change of zoning on Armory Road from C2 to Industrial District. Tom, you want to introduce us to this?
Sure, I'll read the ordinance by caption. Ordinance number 426 of the City of Buckhannon, and ordinance amending zoning ordinance number 244 and ordinance number 282 of the City of Buckhannon by rezoning a portion of that property located at 29 Armory Road from C2 Highway Commercial District to I Industrial District. This is the final of 3 readings. This vote is for adoption. The zoning change appears on these maps that are before us. I think by calculation it's roughly 3,500 square feet or so, give or take, that is being rezoned to bring the line demarking the industrial zone to the front with respect to Route 20 footprint of the existing Armory building. Again, this is third and final reading, and submitted for your
I think this matter first came up as long ago as February or March. Council referred it to Planning Commission. Planning Commission had a couple of public hearings, offered its recommendation unanimously to this council that an ordinance be prepared to adopt their recommendation. We referred it to Mr. O'Neill. We've had a 2-reading ordinance, a public hearing again tonight on this. So this would be the third and final, and it would still be 30 days before it would be effective. I would entertain a motion that we approve this ordinance.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Rollins. May I have a second to his motion?
Second.
I think I heard Mrs. Albaugh.
Sorry,
Discussion on the motion? Hearing of the need for none, I'll call for that question. All those in favor of approving ordinance 426 on final reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign, motion carries. Ordinance 427 of the City of Buckhannon.
So this is ordinance 427 of the City of Buckhannon, and ordinance amending zoning ordinance number 244 of the City of Buckhannon by rezoning those properties located at 52, 54, and 56 South Kanawha Street from R2 General Residential District A to C1 Central Commercial District, Central Commercial Business District. This is the second of 2 readings and adoption. The properties subject to this rezoning appear on the maps, also on the board in front of you. And the purpose of this rezoning is to handle, there are some non-compliance issues that exist on these properties that this rezoning would take care of, and it would also facilitate the demolition of a dilapidated structure on the property and the construction of a new the new facility for Price Electric, which owns the property and is adjacent across the street.
Again, this one has been pending for several months as well, and we've dotted all the i's, crossed all the t's. This is at the initiative of the 3 owners of these lots. This is not an example of spot zoning or anything like that. There's been other discussion about another property in town that I'm not even planning on talking about tonight. But this would be extending what is already our downtown commercial business district, just another 3 lots up Quality Hill on South Kanawha Street.
Yeah, these lots adjoin the lots which are zoned the way these lots will now be zoned, so it does not meet the classification of spot zoning.
All of the neighbors of these properties were notified of their opportunity to participate in the public hearings, and they've declined to do so. I would entertain a motion that we approve on third and final reading ordinance 427.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Skinner. May I have a second? A second by Mr. Rigger. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing of the need for none, I'll call for that question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. And Mr. Rigger is giving me an alloy prodding of the elbow to sign the ordinance. And in 30 days, that'll be law. G3, assign the task of good neighbor property cleanup program to the Housing Enforcement Board. Who wants to speak to that? Sarah or Callie or?
I did.
Go ahead, Callie. Since you got us this grant, you know as much or more about it as anybody.
Well, we created a form. We received that money through the REAP litter control grant that we applied for back in April, I believe. And so this funding would go towards helping folks who are either low income, older residents, or living with a disability who are unable with their own means to get their property cleaned up. So with the use of volunteers in the volunteer center, as well as some of this funding, we'll be able to maybe help those folks out, residents getting their property looking better. So within the packet is the form that we've created. This is actually a Google form, so this can go up on our website and on the volunteer center's website. But also Sarah or Vince, particularly our zoning officer, could help identify people who might need some help and could either help them fill out this form, or people could come to it. They might find it on their own, I suppose, also.
The discussion about this occurred, this came up just about the same time we were having a Housing Enforcement Board meeting. And the likely properties that would be candidates for this program are the ones that are recurring on Vincent Smith's list of properties that need the most attention. Oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, these properties are titled with people that have some economic distress. They just don't have the financial wherewithal to effect these repairs. So this program that we now have a grant for, and which I would also urge this council at such time as we increase our general fund budget to put additional monies into this. And for a long time, we've had this grant program where we let people who have good financial wherewithal, we want them to take that extra step and improve their facades. And we give them money to do that. So this is sort of the equivalent of that program that would help the folks that maybe need it the most, while we're also getting them into compliance with our various building codes and things of that sort. So the idea was, since you've got one agency of our municipal government that already is looking and identifying, for punitive reasons, the worst of these properties, to give this Housing Enforcement Board a softer opportunity to notify these folks that there is a pool of money that they can apply for, and if they can establish the need for it, we got to develop some criteria for that need that will help them get to where they need to be. Does everybody understand what we're trying to do with this? I would like to tonight get the council to approve this in concept, and then have our city attorney, Tom O'Neill, determine whether we need to incorporate this as part of the ordinance that establishes our housing enforcement board. If Tom comes back and say, well, we don't need an ordinance, well, we're good to go with a motion. If he comes back and says we need an ordinance, then he's gonna start that process for us. Does that sound like a plan?
You want us to say yes? I mean, yes, you want to say yes.
I would entertain a
So
motion
moved.
that we approve this in concept. I have Mrs. Alpaugh with a motion. May I have a second by Council Lady Capari. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing of the need for none, I'll call for that question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. I think this is going to be a good thing.
Yes, it is.
G4, Buckhannon Volunteer Center partnership with Volunteer West Virginia as a volunteer reception center for emergency and disaster volunteer opportunities. Sarah, are you going to speak to this one for us?
I am.
Okay.
So Volunteer West Virginia provides our grant, and they recently reached out to all the grantees, ours included, about this opportunity. And so I've included a brief description of what the opportunity is. I talked to Gina May, who does their volunteer for disaster relief specifically with them, just to get some more ideas and make sure that this wouldn't put any liability on us. And so there's two parts really to it, and the first part is if we agree to post volunteer opportunities for disaster relief emergency situations across the state, they are agreeing to give a printer or fax machine to all of the grantees who do that. That's just the first part of it. It doesn't require us to really do anything that we're not already doing. We're already posting needs on our site. This would just be adding needs across the state that refer specifically to emergency and disaster relief. And then the second part of this is becoming a physical disaster relief center. This doesn't put any more liability on us. The liability for volunteers still lies on the organization that they volunteer with. It just means that we become a physical place for volunteers to come and meet at if they're responding to situations like this. Basically, I put some steps there for what we would do. I don't see this as being, we're not gonna have huge groups of volunteers showing up at City Hall. In the case that would happen, I put down some ideas of what we could do to address that, namely making sure that people know that they need to send a representative here as they have a large group, and have a maybe meeting center at Jawbone or something if they have that. But mainly what we would be doing is serving as that coordinating part between the organizations who are working directly in the situation and the volunteers.
Is there an agreement in the packet? Is there
There
any
is a-
documentation of this?
There is not.
I'm just,
There is a very brief, the contract is only for the fax and the printer. There's not any other, it basically says, we agree to serve.
so would a mere motion reflected in our minutes be adequate to accomplish what you're seeking to have us accomplish?
Yes.
We don't need to execute a formal contract or anything of that sort. All right, you've heard the matter explained by Sarah Campbell. I would entertain a motion that we approve this request.
So moved.
I have a motion by Rylands and a second by Skinner. Is there discussion on the motion?
I have participated with Volunteer West Virginia with the flood cleanup in Raynell. It's a good organization. They're very efficient. They were very helpful as far as where we needed to go, how long they needed us, what they needed us for. So I think it's very beneficial, because when something bad happens, it's chaos, and we don't want to think about that. But in a small town like Raynell, where you think you could easily figure out what needs done, when there's vast disaster, it's nice to have a central location with people who are trained and also are knowledgeable as to where the most help is needed and how much. And so I think it's great. I've participated in this. This is a good thing.
Any further discussion on this motion? I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Sarah. Next up is Resolution 2018-18, which would be the resolution of acceptance of a sliver of property down on Milkman Lane. It's going to let us construct some new sidewalk and do some paving down there. Tom, you want to explain this to us?
Yes, to members of council, you have in your packet 4 resolutions of acceptance. However, those are for the 4 deeds that are outstanding. However, the first deed we've only received back the first deed signed. the
We're gonna
first deed.
table the other three. right?
Yeah, I would just
Yeah.
defer them until those deeds come in.
And we suspect that the deeds are all gonna be executed, but
Yes.
we just haven't gotten them back from the
That's right.
owners that are dedicating the properties to the city.
Right, so Resolution 2018-18 is a resolution of acceptance for, well, I'll read it by caption and then talk about it. Resolution number 2018-18 of the Council of the City of Buckhannon, authorizing the city's acceptance of the quitclaim deed from Foster's Marketing Group Incorporated to the City of Buckhannon respecting a lot, tract, or parcel of land containing 1,512 square feet, more or less, all of which real estate is situated on Milkman Lane in Corporation District, Upshur County, West Virginia. This deed, and then the deed immediately precedes a copy of this resolution in your packet, which deed was executed and acknowledged today. The description of the property being conveyed is based upon the field work that we undertook a couple of weeks ago when we were done waiting for the actual surveys to come back. The deed also contains a covenant that at such time as a more particular legal description with good, standardized calls and calls and distances becomes available through survey, that the grantor will execute a corrective instrument so that we can put on record a more technical boundary description of the property than what we're able to do with three guys in a very long tape measure. But this description is perfectly legal to convey the property to the city, and I submit it for your consideration.
I would remind the council that we approved way back in March the memorandum of understanding with Travis Foster. Basically what we're doing, we're getting about a 9-foot strip of property from him along Milkman Lane. That's the alley that runs perpendicular to Traders Alley and Spring Street. And it's 150 feet long or so. Anyway, that's the property. In exchange for that, and under the memorandum of understanding that you approved months ago, when we do the paving down, the new paving of Milkman Lane and the installation of the new sidewalk, the consideration he's receiving is we're going to pave part of his parking lot right beside the alley. So that's what this is all about. It's going to be another really nice dress-up improvement for our downtown. You know what it's all about? I would entertain a motion that we accept this property that is being dedicated to us by the Foster Marketing Group.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Skinner. May I have a second to his motion? I have a second by Council Lady Albaugh.
Is it roll call vote?
Yeah, it will be. Is there discussion on the motion? Tom?
I make one mention on the original. There's an area under sub 1 following the resolution clause that the date of the deed wasn't filled in. That should be filled in. It wasn't
It's
stopped.
16.
It says
It was-
16.
Well, it says that on your copy it does?
Yes.
It says in both places,
Yes.
at the very top, okay.
So let's get this approved and then we'll do the roll call vote. I have a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing the need for none, I'll call for this question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign, and now by roll call vote. Mr. Rieger?
Yes.
Pam Capari?
Yes.
Mrs. Albaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Skinner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Rylands?
Yes.
And the mayor votes yes, so I'm signing mine and we'll start it down the path there. So, there you go, Mr. Rieger.
Thank you, Mayor. As resolutions 2018, 19, 20, and 21 will be brought before the council as those deeds are executed and delivered.
Super. And next time we'll probably have all those. G9 has already been resolved, which was the discussion of our report of the Revenue Review Committee. Takes us down to council comments and announcements. How about that? Who'd have thought we'd get out of here in 2 hours? Mrs. Albaugh?
I'm shocked and I'm ready to go home, so.
Mrs. Albaugh is shocked.
I can't sign my name and talk,
Minutes
so there you
reflect
go.
that Mrs. Albaugh is shocked. Pam Capari, what do you got for us?
Just that Mary and I interviewed 2 people for VIPs this week, and I'm glad to see that we still have people coming out. And And for new people in town, VIP stands for Volunteers in Police Service, and we're looking for people to be interested in that. And you can check at the police station when we'll be doing interviews in the future and everything. And I'm just glad people are willing to do. And it also goes to show you, you can be 18 or you can be 80 plus and still do something for your community. And I'm thrilled to death to say we got our first 80 plus person.
Wow.
We sure do.
And very good health, and I'm tickled. And also, I'm going to be starting on September 10th at 6 o'clock here at City Hall. I'm working my downtown decor committee. I'm going to get it started up for the fall and the Christmas holiday, and I'm asking for volunteers to come and be a part of that.
Getting all fancy on it. What's the decoration? That's the decor.
That decor.
Wow, that's
Not decor, dig.
She's been in the community theater a while now, so her lingo is changing.
Mr. Rylands, what do you got for us?
I'm good.
You're good to go, huh? Mr. Skinner?
I have a whole lot to say, but I'll
Table it.
the only thing I'm going to say is the only thing I'm going to say after everything that's rolling around in my head is
Keep it rolling, Dennis. It's
Yeah.
going to take a while.
We got plenty of time left.
well, I would, but
Go ahead, Robbie. We're just pulling your
if
chain.
if the citizens of the community have a concern or have a question, City Hall can be contacted via telephone, also by visit. We are accessible in the community for questions. I don't understand why people go to Facebook and ask questions of people that have no clue. I mean, really, if you have a question, call City Hall or come by or stop one of us at a place in public, call us, or I tell people to stop by the office. And if we don't know the answer, we'll find it. But I watched a banter go back and forth, not this week, but last week, for 3 days. And nobody came up with an answer because none of the people that were trying to answer the question come to the meeting. They don't come to City Hall to ask the questions. They just formulate these crazy conspiracy theories. And by the time you read down through the thread, we're all a bunch of villains, and the town's falling apart. I really believe that we have a very accessible government organization. The doors are always open. People can come. The meetings are open to the public. The meetings are posted. It's not a secret when they are. It's first and third Thursdays. I believe that we are a very transparent and open organization, and I think we're here to help people, and I wish that I hope that people will utilize us as a resource if they have questions or want to find out how they can either be a part of what's going on, or if they just have a simple question. So that's all I've got.
It's an entertainment venue.
It's not.
No, it's not.
That's the way they view it.
Axe grinding.
They might get
It's
an
one of
answer.
these, David. Oh,
It's
sorry.
speculation.
Well stated, Mr. Skinner. I would say some other things too, but we should probably
You did
just let
great.
it go.
Table it.
Mr. Thomas, what you got for us?
I need a heating blanket.
I turned it.
I think you turned it down.
I think you turned it up too much.
I'm gonna get you a shawl.
Give me a snuggie.
I raised the
for David's chair.
Anybody wants to donate a shawl to me for this council meeting, I'll be glad.
Mr. Rigger, do you have anything else, Dave?
Thanks for that,
chatter.
buddy.
No. Mr. Rigger, what do you got?
I have no comment.
Nothing. Wow, what have I got? I've got just two quick things in your packet. In the spirit of what we did last year, you might recall the Charlottesville, Virginia incident and some of our Wesleyan kids that were contemplating balking on coming here because they thought Buckhannon was like Charlottesville, Virginia. So I'm delivering my orange signs around town again today, and we're going to try to get as many of our merchants and shopkeepers as possible to send the message to the incoming Wesleyan troops that they're all welcome, and we don't care what color or religion or whatever else they are, everybody is welcome here. We really are all in it together. That's all I've got, unless anybody else has anything for the good of the order. I would entertain a motion that we adjourn at 9:04. Motion by Albaugh, second by Thomas. Call for the question. All those in favor of adjourn, signify by saying aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.